Hermod, the Spirit of War, is one of the two bosses released with the Necromancy skill, and I am going to go ahead and give my thoughts on him. I will be breaking this down into two sections. The first being the boss encounter itself, and the second being how the mechanical aspect of Necromancy is played out. The requirements for Hermod is the completion of the Spirit of War quest, which require level 65 Necromancy and 3k souls in the Well of Souls. The problem with this is by the time you get to this point, you are already at level 70, so Hermod is a level 70 boss, which is why I find it weird that the requirements for the quest to unlock the boss requires 65. Because by the time you get your gear, you're already at level 70, so you may as well make the level 70 gear. The issue I have with this is that level 70 combat bracket in RuneScape is poorly defined. A lot of that content that was designed for level 70 is pre-EOC, and that has been significantly outdated. This means that when we try to compare Hermod to previous bosses, we can't because we have no baseline to begin with. This becomes problematic because Hermod as a boss encounter is very flawed in my opinion. It has two mechanics, and one of those mechanics you can outright ignore. This basically means Hermod is an elite slayer monster with one mechanic. Think about that. The difference between an elite slayer mob and Hermod is one mechanic. Just to be fair, let's go over its two mechanics. The first mechanic is a ground slam, where he swings his sword and does a massive AoE on the floor. If you get hit by this, you have to turn off your prayers get turned off. You can outright ignore this because the damage you take is minimal and you can just face tank it for the most part. This means Hermod has one mechanic. The other mechanic is the minions, where it spawns minions and you have to defeat them before to progress with the boss encounter. After killing Hermod for 100 KC, it feels like it is missing one more mechanic to bring the whole boss fight together. Individually, these two mechanics are fine, but it feels like it's missing something to actually make you feel like you are doing a boss. Because of that, I would suggest adding a third mechanic that when Hermod gets to 25k HP, or 1/4, every third auto attack, it will do a percentage-based damage, which can be blocked using Resonance, Debilitate, Deflect, because these abilities are a core part of RuneScape free combat. So adding a mechanic that incentivizes players to use these mechanics would introduce them to these long-term mechanics earlier on. And that's all I have to say about this section of the video. The next section I'll be going over the mechanical side of Necromancy and how it played out during my 100 KCs at Hermod. One thing that I have repeatedly mentioned in my Necromancy videos, for the last two of them, is that I believe that Necromancy is a more complex skill than Magic Melee and Range, and that's mainly due to the fact that you are micromanaging so many different things. For instance, you are micromanaging your Adrenaline in relation to your two different stacking abilities, your Necrosis stack and your Soul Sap stacks. On top of that, you also have to manage in your Conjures, and when you add all this together in a boss encounter like Hermod, you realize mechanically Necromancy is really intense. And by the time I got done with my 100 KC of Necromancy, I felt like I was developing arthritis symptoms. This is insane because it feels like the game is pushing me towards using Revolution to at least automate some of the process of mechanically playing the game, and I'm not a fan of that. On top of that, it feels like there are just way too many inputs. If you compare this to like a game like League of Legends, you only have 4 buttons. There's 4 inputs. That's it, right? That's the simplest form you can explain it. But even if you compare it to its peers like World of Warcraft, like Final Fantasy, like Guild Wars 2, like Lost Ark, all these other MMOs, they don't have nearly as many inputs. And this becomes a problem because if you're trying to appeal to a new audience or a new players, why would they play your game when your game is significantly more mechanically demanding than any other game they can play on the market? They don't want to play in an RTS, they want to play an MMO, and MMOs are not supposed to be mechanically intense like this. And this is my problem with doing 100 KC on Hermod. I pretty much confirmed my own biases. I speculated in my first video and then on my second video, and it feels like everything that I'm saying, I'm getting reinforced by progressing Necromancy. It feels like Jaggers are not learning how to make an engaging combat system, and that's frustrating. And they are getting away with this by making Necromancy overtuned or overpowered. And they won't learn from their mistakes because when Elder God Wars Dungeon 2 came out, I mentioned this before, Fracture Staff of Armadale, Animate Dead, Crit Bloom, they came out within 4 months. They were all broken, and they took Jagex over a year to respond and fix these issues. Now, think about a skill like Necromancy, which is significantly more in depth and detail, right, it's going to take him 5 years to fix these issues. To wrap up this video, I'm going to go over the loot that I got from killing Hermod 100 times and some of my closing thoughts. So overall, I got a decent set of loot worth around 3.5 mil, and it's fine, right? It's passable for the tier of boss that Hermod is. However, I only got 11 harmonic plates, and considering I need I think 40 is the maximum harmonic plates to complete all the upgrades for both tank and DPS, I don't feel confident in doing another presumably 300 more KC of Hermod just to get all my upgrades. Doing 100 was annoying, and I don't want to do any more than that. The boss itself was very boring and repetitive, and I would really hope Jagex takes some of the feedback I mentioned in this video, particularly adding the third mechanic into Hermod to flesh out that encounter and make it more memorable and exciting, so players would want to do Hermod, not necessarily that they have to do Hermod.